good morning / good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Honestly, I woke up about 20 minutes ago, which is weird seeing how it's like 7:30 in Moscow PM. Yeah, it's a great start to a day.
Wait, are you filming something?
We're finishing some post work at the same time for another project. So it's kind of like, as it should be. I love it. That's the way it should be.
Cool. Before we get into why nobody, which congratulations on, and I have a lot to say about that. I ask everyone the same first few questions. The first of which is, what TV show would you love to guest direct?
Well, I know that Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are doing Fallout, and that's probably my my favorite video game of all time, favorite video game series. So that would be very exciting.
What movie or movies do you think you've seen the most?
Ooh, it would have to be. It's probably low 20s views, but I'd say it's either Hot Fuzz or Anchorman.
Oh, okay. Both are fantastic.
Yeah.
What was it? Why so long after Hardcore Henry? I would imagine after that movie came out, people must have been like, we want to make a movie with you. So what was it that kept you on the sidelines doing other stuff, but not making another feature?
Trying to think, what's a good, honest answer that paints me in a decent light? Yeah, I think the honest answer was this. We were in talks with the Russo brothers for a long time for a film called Soodad. And they were producing and they wrote it. I was a big fan of that script and I had a take on it. And I passed at the very last minute. I got right after Hardcore opened, I got pneumonia. You know how when you're at war, your body keeps you, it knows that there's no way you can be sick right now. So for 3 years it took to make Hardcore, I was completely, for the first time in my life, I never gotten sick. There was just no opportunity to do so. And after Moscow's premiere, which was the last premiere for Hardcore, the next morning I woke up in the hospital with pneumonia and I spent 3 weeks there. And in that half catatonic state with all the IVs and everything, I passed on Soodad, which then became Extraction. So after that happened, I passed because I wanted to do something that was self-generated, which was an interesting thought at the time. It took me years to understand that it was the right choice to do. First, I was kind of kicking myself in the head. But I wrote and co-wrote quite a few scripts. Some might still happen, hopefully. We're working on that. And I did a lot of music videos and a lot of commercials and just kind of kept training the directorial muscle, so to speak.
I've spoken to a lot of directors that talk about how at the end of a shoot they just collapse.
Oh yeah,
because it's a thing I've heard from many people.
Mm-hmm. It's I remember watching, I think it was Platoon and Charlie Sheen. There's a scene when he's in the jungle at night and it's raining, and I remember looking at that going, I'd be dead in the first night, not from the bullets, but I'd be dead just from the weather. It's impossible to survive. And again, comparing filmmaking to wars is a silly thing to say. It's obviously, we have it, the stakes are quite a little bit lower for us, but the body just does a wonderful thing where it knows it just can't afford any downtime. So it goes on overpower, but afterwards you switch off. I remember reading about I think it was A Bridge Too Far. Who directed Bridge Too Far? David?
It wasn't David Lean, was it?
I want to say, but I don't think it was, but I want to say, 1 second. I can't let this, sorry. Bridge Too Far. I should know this. I love that movie. What's wrong with me? It was Richard Attenborough.
There we go.
Close enough. No, not close enough at all. God damn it. But I remember reading that he slept for a week, literally a week after the film wrapped. You would sleep for a week, you get up, you eat, you go to the bathroom, you go back to bed. And I can appreciate how that happens.
Yeah, we could spend a whole bunch of time on this, and I could relay story after story of what I've heard. But what did you learn making Hardcore Henry that you wanted to apply to to Nobody or anything that you did in the future?
Might sound a little silly, but the art, the biggest thing I learned was the art of movie magic, or the art of movie lying, I guess, where what we really have to do as directors a lot of the time, or in fact, most of the time, is to, we don't do things for real. And obviously you present them as real as you can, depending on the genre you're going for. But as an example, there's a car chase in Hardcore Henry, and there's a moment where he catches up to the bad guy's truck, and he climbs on the side and he gets up to the roof, and he jumps down through the port before the bridge kills him. And we didn't have much money in that movie. And I remember arguing with my producer, who I love very much, Katya Kanadienko, and we built the back of the truck for, as we're chasing it, we climb up, and we had to, it was a regular sized truck. We needed to make it big to fit the interior scene we already shot. So we built this huge rig for the back, this wooden wall that looked very metal and worked. And I remember saying, we need to have the same width on top of the truck as he climbs up, because that's gonna it doesn't make any sense if he's on this huge thing in the back and he climbs up and it's thinner, the audience is gonna know, etc. And Katya was telling me, Ilya, it's movie making. We can't afford to build this huge thing. And I remember, like, we have to build it. And this was Ilya back in, I hate to talk about myself in third person, but 2012, 2013, Ilya was adamant we build this thing. And I'm glad she talked me out of it back then, but I was very hesitant that this is not gonna work. And obviously when you watch the movie, you never notice the difference. The size literally becomes twice as small. And that's an example of the kind of things where you understand how to spend resources wisely, how to spend your pre-production wisely, how to spend your time rewriting the script wisely. And obviously when you're shooting, you don't spend energy, or you don't expend it where you really don't need to, and concentrate on really important things. And that comes with experience. And when you start to understand what you really need to be sure of, and what ultimately no one but you is gonna know. And that is sort of the art of movie magic.
Completely. That makes a lot of sense, actually. So I read that, and of course I could be wrong, but I read that for you to do an American project, you had like a list of things you wanted, like you wanted to work with 87 North, you wanted it to be an actor that played against type, all these kind of things, and then this project sort of lands. Yeah. What was it like for you hearing about this project? Because it met like everything that you wanted in a project.
The email from my agent, because I was talking to Mike Simpson, my agent, and I brought that up before as sort of, if we were to do an American action film, this is sort of the ingredients I'd love to have. And then I get the email that says, ask and you shall receive. And that happened literally, like, I think, 6 or 7 months after we talked about it. So it said Bob Odenkirk, lead, Derek Kolstad, a script, 87 North producing. So as I was reading it, it's nice to read. Sometimes it's nice to read a script knowing what the intent is of this star. And it just clicked right away. It's very rarely with scripts just, again, click right away. Usually it's, you read and you think about it. There's things you like, things you don't like. You think about how you can improve it, how you can make it more your own, how you can expand some of the themes. But this one, it made sense. And I think the most important thing that happened at the end of my first read through, I thought I understood what this film really needs to be about and what it is about. And I remember talking to Bob, my first conversation with Bob, I didn't talk about the action at all. I just said, Bob, I think this movie is about, it's about a guy addicted to violence. It really is an addiction drama that's going to be masquerading as a popcorn action extravaganza. And if we come up from that angle, that was going to make it special, because the action is going to be great. We can make it great. There's examples. It's not the question of that. It's how to make it special, how to make it stand out today. And I think Bob really appreciated the fact that I approached it from a story and character standpoint rather than just talk about how cool the shots are going to be.
Sure. I heard when you went in, because obviously you pitched on the movie, I heard that you had like a 30-page treatment, and it was like during the treatment that they were like, oh, no, stop, just you got it. Is that true?
Close. It was a 30. I actually looked up the other day just so I made sure I wasn't bullshitting anybody. It was 28 pages, and they stopped me on page 14. which is exactly halfway through. And they said, that's enough. We think we get it. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was thinking, is this a good sign? It's probably not a good sign. They didn't let me finish. But I went back to the hotel and got a call the same night saying, you got it. So, and before that, I was thinking, I'm not quite sure. So it's like actors going to auditions. Every time you think you've messed it up, you actually did a great job, and vice versa.
Got it. Well, also, I think that, they must have liked what you were selling,
There was, I mean, yes, that's an arguable fact right there. But it was the treatment was made with a lot of love. I really put a lot of heart and soul into that. It wasn't, I do a lot of, not so much anymore, but I used to do a lot of treatments for music videos and commercials. So I knew it's a very different world. With commercials, it's always, you do these 50-page treatments, which are half the time that ghostwritten. You just dictate what the thought is, and there's people who put it together for you because there's just a lot of work, and I'm lazy. I'm not, but I kind of am. With a lot of commercial treatments, they're expected to be just highly detailed, unnecessarily so. But with movies, you want to get across just the point of what you're going to be doing. You want to sell it thematically, look and feel, and that's pretty much it. And I just concentrated on things that I would have wanted to hear from a director if I was a producer on it. That's it. So I wanted to myself, the same way I make a movie, I want to make sure I like it, because if I like it, there's a chance some other people, I'm not that weird and crazy. And that's the same thing with the presentation.
I heard that you wanted it to look or feel a little bit like Korean thrillers. Like that was something that you brought up. Can you talk about which films maybe you mentioned to everyone or Bob in terms of like maybe watch these just so you know what I'm looking for?
When I signed on, we met with Derek and Bob. We knew there's going to be a draft or two more. And as I pitched my ideas for what we want to expand upon in the film and what themes you got to hit harder and how we're going to do the Russian angle, I remember saying, Bob, I'm sure you've seen some South Korean movies, right? He's like, yeah, he saw Old Boy, he saw the classics. And Derek obviously seen everything because Derek loves that genre as much as I do. I said, guys, imagine it's, I remember showing Bob Bittersweet Life and telling him that, imagine if it's a Russian making a South Korean thriller in America and you're the guy that's in it. That's how I want to approach this. And we did not tell everybody that because this was pre-Parasite, right? Before everybody knew what South Korean movies are. But it was not a hard sell, for Bob, because, you watch, Bittersweet Life is not, we're not trying to copy it. We're not trying to emulate much of it, except the fact that it is character driven with great action. And the tone is fairly somber. So I said this, but there will be, the popcorn elements that we very, very much are required to have in the studio summer release, which it was at that point. August 14th, I believe, is the original plan.
Completely. One of the things that I think will surprise people about Bob is he trained for 2 years for this movie, even before there was a green light, even before it was going to be made. And it shows, and we'll talk specifically about the bus fight and other things that he did. But can you sort of talk about the fact that he went above and beyond preparing for this movie more than most people for almost anybody?
Mm-hmm. I think he started a little bit before I signed on. So at that point, it was I'd say it was about a year and 6 or 7 months prior to pre-production that he was already hitting the gym and working with Daniel Bernhardt, the trainer, the actor, the trainer. I remember going to 8711 by LAX where they were training, and there was a huge room, the training grounds, and there was I walk in, I got my camera and all this other, camera tools, and there's Keanu Reeves training with 12 people for John Wick 3, and Keanu's super proficient as you expect him to be. It's Keanu, And I walk past all the cameras, and Keanu gives me this look. Who is this guy? I'm like, I'm on my way. I kind of make sure the camera's pointed away, because the last thing anybody wants when they're training is to have some dude they don't know with the camera pointed their way. And I walk past, and there's part of the big floor is separated out by boxes. You know, every stunt space has lots of boxes. They do everything with boxes. They made the bus fight out of the bus out of boxes for the previous, for example. The boxes are very important. And there's this little room, and I walk in, and Bob is sweating his ass off, just working super hard. He's falling down, he's getting up, he's falling down, he's getting up. He's doing these 5 consecutive movements, throwing the guy, getting thrown himself. And he's super sweaty. It's super hard. This is early on in the process for him. And I remember standing in the corner, recording with my iPhone. As I'm recording Bob, I turned to see Keanu doing this thing that he's super great at, and I've seen him do, and I very much enjoy. And I turn my head, and here's Bob, who's having a hard time doing this. And I remember thinking to myself, I hope this movie really does get made, because I've yet to see this, talking about Bob, and the effort that the character is going to need, and we're going to show, as he's not a well-oiled machine at the start, and he gets there, combined with his acting abilities, was going to be special.
And it shows in the movie. Bob's fantastic. When you were filming the movie, did you try and, I know obviously you did not have a ton of money to make this, but did you try and schedule anything?
Wait a minute, we had millions.
Right,
Sorry.
exactly. This was not a Marvel budget. What I'm basically saying is that, did you try and schedule certain things for the beginning, middle, or end of the shoot based on, for certain reasons? Or was it sort of like you're filming the way the schedule gods sort of threw their dice?
We had a fantastic first AD, Paul Barry, who's made huge movies, small movies. He definitely knows this thing. And obviously, as a director, we all dream of making movies in sequence. Of course, it doesn't happen, and that's okay. But I think the only day that stayed with the same plan throughout pre-production and production was the day we shot. I can go into spoilers a little bit, right? That when the hitmen come to visit Christopher Lloyd's character, because obviously it's my amazing cameo, my entrance into big time Hollywood acting, but not so much about me. But the second hitman is North American audiences will not recognize, but he is a guy called Sergei Shnurov, who is Russia's, biggest huge rock star. And he was touring America. He's a friend of mine. I directed a few music videos for him over the years. And I said, look, we're making this movie. We're gonna have a Russian mob. We want to make it as authentic as possible. It'd be great if you can show up. In fact, I remember getting the first call about getting a call with Bob while we're shooting a music video for him. And I got all very giddy. And he's like, you seem to be very happy today. I'm like, well, I do believe I found something I'm going to be doing next. He's like, a movie? I'm like, yes. He's like, in America? I'm like, I think so. He's like, it's a throwaway line. He's kind of like between the takes. He's like, just call me if you want me to be in it. Just remember that. I was like, I will, and then a long time later, I think it was a year and a half after that, where I called him and showed up. But getting back to your question, it was because Bob was super over prepared. We could have done the action whenever we wanted. We just didn't want to start the first day with action, because you kind of, the crew has to get the feel for how the tempo and, get to know each other before we get to the really technical parts of the shoot. But we, I think we did the bus fight was end of week 2. Yeah, because we started on a Monday, and I think it was a Friday of the second week, where it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday shoot, 3 days in a row, night shoots, which I love night shoots. Again, I'm a night owl. It made me very happy. Yeah. In fact, the script I'm writing now, it's mostly set at night, and I can imagine, and I'm sadly gonna have to annoy a lot of crew members, but I know we're gonna have a nicer looking picture, because you just control the lights. That's the wonderful thing. As daytime, it can be beautiful with the right sun, but when you're in Winnipeg, you're not gonna get much sun in November, realistically. So lucky we had a lot of the film take place at nighttime.
The opening montage of the film is really well cut. I'm just curious how long for like I don't know how long it is in the movie. It's like, you know, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it may be. How long did that actually take to edit?
Are you talking about the days of the week? We call it the mundanity montage. Or are you talking about the intro where the song plays and before the credits, as the credits?
No, not the beginning, not the very, very beginning, but when, the montage of him going to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah. I think there were two possible cuts for that. We had one that was another musical number, and we just kind of thought, well, it's kind of silly to have a musical intro, which we all love very much with Nina Simone's track, and then follow that up with another musical number, musical montage. So it was, I don't recall exactly how many days, but it was definitely not in the script. And we kind of felt that we needed more, because originally it went from the title sequence straight to him waking up in the middle of the night. And that sequence was added to show a little bit more of how bored he is. And that, I don't think it took that long to put together, but it was very important to have, that it sets a perfect tempo.
No, I think that sequence actually says a lot about the character and where he's at. And I think it's really smart that you put it in.
Well, I'll tell you, originally when we were talking about it, I hated the idea. I'll be honest. And it's because it's always this fight of, and I had the same thing with hardcore where we had all these different cuts, and I would, we put Tim Roth in the beginning of hardcore, and William Yates put that in, the editor. And I remember watching, I was like, that's not what we meant. You can't wait. And I remember just the inner voice saying, Ilya, shut the hell up. Look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. I know it's hard. I know you're not going to be subjective, but that's the job right now. Be as objective as possible. Does it work? It does. Shut the fuck up. Enjoy it. And same thing happened here. So it's 2 films in a row where I'm hesitant at first, but then very happy with it later.
Yeah, I've spoken to filmmakers who have taken out jokes that are huge jokes, but it's no longer funny to them. So they have to watch it again with an audience to realize this is still funny, even if I don't think it's funny.
Mm-hmm. Of course. It's the idea that you're being too close to material is absolutely true. And I remember, I think it was, I can't remember the writer. I think it was Thomas Lennon. I was watching an interview with him where he was talking about how as he works as a writer and the studio says we need a fresh pair of eyes, and he used to get really annoyed when they would say that to him, and then I realized it's a blessing. That means everything's going to work, and they just really want a fresh pair of eyes. Nothing wrong with his eyes. It just needs to be a fresh pair of eyes. As a director, it's not like you have the opportunity to be like, all right, let's get another director into work, right? You got to really fuck something up to piss off the producers and the studio to be replaced. And as this was a very sort of friendly project all the way through, and I'm not just saying it really was. I had a fucking great time. It's important to be able to open your ears and really listen to what people around you are saying. And when we had that first cut, and I had not the first cut, but that cut of the mundanity sequence, as we call it, I was like, Ilya, this is great. I know it's not the slow burn intro, but it's great. Look at it again. And I would look at it again and be like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy it because, it's just, that's the way it is.
Speaking of first cuts, how long, the movie's about an hour and a half. How long was your first cut of the film?
I think the assembly must have been 1 hour 51, 1 hour maybe 49. It was never that long. It was a 100-page script, maybe 105-page script, at least as we went in, because there was a lot of reiterations as we were shooting. But the biggest change that occurred between the director's cut and the final cut is there was a fantastic idea to condense Act 2. There was a bigger, I think we cut 3 scenes out of the film, and they were mostly to do with Michael Ironside's character, Hutch's father-in-law as he would call and find out who his son is. And it was just a longer and unnecessary sequence. We always loved it in the script, and we shot it. It's great scenes. And it was, I was talking to Billy McClellan, who plays the brother-in-law, and I was saying, Billy, things are changing a little bit. You're going to have your moment to shine, but it's not going to be as much screen time, but it is what it is, I remember him saying, well, movies all that matters. I'm like, you're goddamn right. I think that was the biggest change. And that condensed, I think, 7 or 8 minutes.
True or false? You cast Michael Ironside, not because he's a good actor, not because his part is important in the movie. You literally just wanted to geek out all day about Total Recall and RoboCop, and that's why he's in the movie.
Guilty.
That's all I would do.
We were told by our Canadian casting director that Ironside is available and he liked the script. And we're like, I don't think there's any further point in discussing. If he wants to come in and do this, we're lucky to have him. And he was just, I think, there was something, I didn't talk to him before I saw him on set because we knew he was going to do a great job. He's not an actor you audition. He's not an actor you really need to talk to before you get in there. And we're shooting, I'll tell you a little Michael Ironside story if we have a little bit of time. We're shooting a scene that had to go from the cut, but it's a bar scene. He's pretty much picking up a rotary phone and he's taking his time. It's a one long dolly, and as he's calling the guy at the Pentagon and trying to find out information about Hutch's character, and it's a very tight bar, little Irish bar in Winnipeg, and Michael doing a great job. It's a oneer. We just pull in and push in and picks up the phone, he dials and he talks. But we couldn't get the movement of the dolly perfect. And Michael calls me over after take 3. Ilya, can you come over here for a second? And we chatted, briefly before that. We introduced. It was great. He was very warm to begin with. So he's very stern. He's like, Ilya, is this one of those movies where the director knows exactly what they want and they're going to make everybody suffer until they get it? Yes, Michael, that is the case. And I'm expecting a hailstorm or anything. I'm just, because you don't know. I met the guy, 2 hours ago. And he says, okay. So tell me, are you married? I'm like, yes, Michael, I am. He's like, how long? I'm like, 10, 11 years, maybe a dozen. And he's like, okay. She must be one very patient lady. And he slaps my back and says, let's go. And we just, we do another couple of takes, and he keeps on acing it, and then we have to catch up to his level of awesomeness. So that was fun. But he was, he really is just like Chris Lloyd, just like Bob, very, 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 a very warm individual. That sounds like I'm like an alien host, but but he really was. He was just this very. It was when we wrapped him and the shoot. I was very sad to see him say goodbye.
Whose idea was it to put the Touch of Evil poster in Hutch's basement?
I think we were discussing with Roger Fires, our production designer, and we said, let's try to make a poster and let's make it over the top because it's going to be there for such a brief period of time and very few people notice, and those that notice it will get a kick out of it. So it was me in conjunction with our production designer.
Yeah, I thought that was a good touch.
It's kind of a little, yeah, sorry, go ahead. No.
I mean, one of the things that I thought was ingenious is that you crafted an action set piece with Christopher Lloyd where he doesn't have to stand up. He's an older gentleman, so obviously he can only do so much, but it's a great little bit where he's just sitting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was the first thing we shot with him as well. We had his conversation with Bob, and then it's straight into the action. And he was. I was just watching behind the scenes. I was sent for approval the other day, and I don't like seeing myself on camera, but there's shots of footage of me just talking to Lloyd, and I can see how happy I am. So, and I was happy for 2 reasons. One, I knew it was going to be a great scene. It was working exactly as intended. And 2, I'm shooting Christopher Lloyd, shooting people, actually shooting me. So, one for the memories,
Yeah, it's a really good sequence. Now let's jump into the bus fight sequence. It's brutal. It's so well done, and I like the fact that the first half of the bus sequence has no music; it's just the sound of violence. And then when he gets back up from being kicked out of the window, that's when all of a sudden, like, the anger turns on. There's music. Can you sort of talk about putting that sequence together and what you wanted to accomplish?
First up, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you for saying it's brutal, because that was part of the goal.
I don't see how anyone's going to watch that and be like, "Ooh, that's tame."
Good is what I have to say to that. It was always planned to be that way musically, in terms of the score would always kick in the finale, because we just wanted it to be, as I think when music kicks in generally, especially if a song kicks in, not that it does in the bus, but when a song kicks in, that's when the audience feels like it's okay to relax. We know it's going to be fine. You don't play songs when there's danger for the character. And I've learned that editing and re-editing hardcore, hence the Queen track, which was a choice to let everybody breathe out a little bit, and to borrow from Edgar Wright at the same time. I was very proud when I put that scene together and we put it with the Queen song. I remember thinking, God, it's such a great choice, Ilya. So original, so well made. And I was like, fuck me. Shaun of the Dead. All right. I just seen that movie, a dozen times. Great. All right. Borrow from the best. It's okay. But that scene was very heavily prevised, the bus fight. We spent a lot of time talking about it with Greg Mentor, our stunt coordinator, a lot of time with Bob and Greg and the team inside the bus, just walking around and talking and coming up with things and dropping things. It was very important to make sure there's levity amidst all the carnage. And I've learned from hardcore that, and I call it hardcore because in Russia it was still called hardcore. It's only in America that was Hardcore Henry. I learned that you don't need to go for a big laugh to get a big laugh or to get a big chuckle when it's placed next to violence, because by contrast, comedy and violence elevate each other. Which is a wonderful tool, and that's some of the things you learn. The more you shoot, the more you put the movie together. But it was always meant to be brutal. I always described it as Bob's character should be like a Wolverine, not Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but the Wolverine, the animal. If you watch how a real Wolverine fights and what he does, that's what Bob's attitude is in that scene. And that kind of was the key to writing, planning it out. And there were very few surprises and sort of things we changed along the way as we were shooting. Again, because we just over prepped. And with a schedule like this, you can't just spend a lot of time going, oh, what about this? What about that? You know exactly what you want. You go in there, you shoot it, you do the best of your abilities and hope that it works. What more can I add about the bus fight scene?
Well, I'm going to ask you, with
Please
something
do.
like that where you pre-vis, well, I'll go further. Obviously, you pre-vis that and you're thinking about everything. How much are you, with that sequence, how much is everything with where the camera is going to be all figured out before you step on set? And how much are you sort of thinking, can I cheat a camera there for extra coverage? Talk a little bit about camera placement.
There wasn't much improvisation. I'd say about 15%. I'd say 20 is probably overreaching, but I'd say 15%. There's things that, you got to be flexible. The wonderful thing with being over prepped and knowing everything up front is that you understand what's important and what's not important. So just as we had days where we had a scene with 15 shots lined up and we get there and we watch the actors, and Pavel and I would be like, turn their first AD and say, throw out the shooting plan. We're going to do 3 shots and that's it. That's all you need. So, and that comes from knowing exactly what, before I flew out to Canada, I did 2,000 storyboards. So as I arrived, I put them up on the wall, and when the producers and Bob would arrive, I'd be like, this is the movie. Let's talk about it. And you can, put a little dialogue in, and you walk in and watch a graphic novel, basically, which really helped. But the bus is a very tight space. Things that work while you're walking around with an iPhone would not necessarily work when you have, a big camera. but it mostly stayed very, very close to the original plan. I think one of the things that we made a good call on that. We shot more comedy to have in our back pocket, necessarily like the stop requested sign with the ping, ping, ping. I thought maybe it would work if you're just pulling the wire. Maybe that's enough, but it's great to have that shot of the thing lighting up. And originally I thought, man, it's probably we're trying too cute and we're trying too hard. But you sit in the edit and you're going, nope, I think this is perfect. Let's lighten it up. There's enough carnage around that it's not going to feel like we're going for something cheap.
Yeah, no, I actually like that bit. It's fun. So there's a little bit of an homage to Goodfellas in this movie where, was that on purpose? Were you looking at Goodfellas and being like, we're going to do that?
The scene that Derek wrote was Julian, played by Alexey Serebryakov, would be arriving at a club and going through all the back rooms and seeing the kitchen and seeing there's a bit of a drug operation, some of the paintings would be in there. So we wanted to present. I think originally the intent was to show Julian's whole operation in that one sequence. And as we found the place that we liked in Winnipeg to shoot, we realized that we wanted to do a oneer just because it's a new introduction. It's the next chapter. It's pretty much the second act of the film. Well, to me, it's hard. Sometimes it can be broken down into 3 or 5 acts differently. But to me, it always felt like this is the title card. This is now we had nobody, and now we're introducing Julian. So we wanted to take our time with the introduction. And we found the club. The basement of the club was just not great. And as we're standing outside, I'm looking around, and it's a cold Winnipeg evening. And Pavel and I start walking around, and I remember crossing the street and saying, I think we should just, cut all that unnecessary stuff about him and show exactly what's happening in the basement and just have him go in there and do the dance. That's it. You don't need to know he's a bad guy because we're going to go find out, a minute and a half later. Plus, the audience is smart. They know when this guy walks out that exactly who he is. There's a menace right away. So even though we knew that's going to be the pop song playing, by the way, which is an Easter egg, is it an Easter egg if the director talks about it beforehand? Screw it. One of life's many questions, is it? Yeah. Sorry.
So I was going to say Easter eggs are things that a person watching the movie might notice. And sometimes it's Easter eggs that only the director knows, so there's many different versions. There's the things that fans are going to notice and things that fans might not notice. There's many versions of it.
Then I feel good at revealing this one. So, because not many fans are going to know this one. So the song that he comes out of the car, and I'll come back to this sequence, but because, my mind does jump around a little bit. In fact, the only place where I'm really focused is during writing and shooting. It's strange how the organism works. But the song that he sings is a Russian pop song from the early 90s called The Auditor. So reality, he's singing about the character that's going to be killing him later on. And the song is from a girl's perspective, falling in love with an auditor, which is exactly the opposite of what happens in the film. So I know the Russian crowds are going to get it. We're going to have a good time, but Americans, not so much.
I was going to say, I've seen the movie twice. I would never have known.
No, it's, of course not. You're not from around these parts, but I remember I was watching Goodfellas. In fact, I think I was going through a lot of, as we were prepping, I was watching, even not that this is, trying to be a Martin Scorsese movie. It's not in the slightest, but I remember The Irishman was coming out as we were about to shoot. So I remember I went on a spree of watching Scorsese films, and the Goodfellas scene, the classic, oneer as he arrives and goes through the basement. And so it turns out the original script, and this is per the IMDb trivia, so I might be full of it, or they might be full of it, or whoever put that in. But the original scene was him arriving. Ray Liotta arrives at the club, door opens, and it's supposed to be a oneer as he walks into the club. But they weren't allowed to use the main entrance, apparently. So they had to use the underground, and that's how the whole sequence was born. So in fact, we had the complete opposite of that, where we wanted to have the basement, but it kind of sucked. We didn't want to use it, so we had to use an exterior shot, which I thought was kind of cute as a counter, as a complete counter to what Scorsese did. But and then I was also very proud of the idea of the car stopping. I was thinking, this is such a great moment. He's walking, he doesn't give a shit. I love it. It's pretty fresh. I'm like, God damn it, Training Day. And, it's Ethan Hawke and Denzel walking out of a diner in the beginning of that movie. And they have the same shot where Denzel walks and all the cars stop in front of him. It's the same sideways shot that we do here. So it's great how your mind makes you feel like you're absolutely amazing until you remember that, well, you're amazing because you're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, something though, it's very, very hard in the history of cinema, which is now over 100 years, to it just almost everything's been done. It's really hard.
It's all about the combinations. It's the story about a hitman going back to his prior life. A retired hitman has been done a lot of times. It's all about how you present it and if you bring something new to the table. And I think Tarantino taught everybody is that you can borrow, you can get inspired, you can pay homage, but if you do a good job with it and you bring your own and add your own to it, you're fine. And that's what we really are all doing. We're all expanding upon each other's works.
Completely. How tough was it working with the Kitten?
On a scale of 1 to 5, I'd say it's 1. I think it's the only scene in the film where we had to shoot the actors separately. We had an outbreak of, I'm not sure what the right term for it is. What was it? The not neuro, because that would be in the brain.
The norovirus.
The norovirus. That's what we had for 2 weeks. It plagued our set. So we did the whole wash your hands every 15 minutes. We did that before it was cool. We had to shoot that whole scene. The detectives and the detectives and Bob were never in the same scene together. It was all movie magic. Not complicated, but movie magic. That was the complicated part of it, not the Kitten. The Kitten was very well behaved. A lot of experience in films. That Kitten, it didn't, but it was a professional.
I would have never known they weren't in the same scene.
Yeah.
So you have an after the credits scene. Was it always going to be that scene? How did you come up with that, or how did that get done?
Well, the draft that I read originally had. It had Chris Lloyd's character and Harry, who's played by Riza. We had the scene with, what we had originally was Lloyd takes care of the hitman and then he disappears until the after credits scene. And same with Harry, never appeared in the film apart from the radio voice. And the ending, the original post-credit sequence that Derek had was the doors blast open in some corporation, and the 3 of them coming in with shotguns and blasting everybody away, and music would start playing and the credits would roll over that sequence. And we're reading and saying, great, post-credit scenes they've been in vogue for quite a while now. But I think it's a disservice to not include the father and the brother in the finale instead. That's where they need to be. It really needs to. We need to escalate the action, and the best way to escalate the action is to add more higher stakes and have more characters on each side. So it wouldn't be just Bob fighting, 50 Russians. It would be Bob, his dad, and his brother uniting. It thematically makes it a lot more sense, and it's also the family coming together. And that was one of the changes that we did during the constant rewrites.
My only question. And I'm going to and about the film, and because I was watching it again last night. So the obelisk, which is the Russian mafia's money.
May I correct you? I'm so sorry, Stephen. The Obshak.
Oh, Obshak. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry for coming up, not coming up, for adding a very Russian term to an American movie and going. The guys will remember. Come on, Obshak. Yes. Yeah. And by the way, a little bit of useless fun fact trivia is that we kept calling it the Bob Shack. And we kept singing the B-52 song, Love Shack. And we go, Bob Shack, baby. Yeah, that's how much fun we had on this set. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. So my only question for you is, and this is a logic / suspension of disbelief question. So the only thing I'm wondering is, how is their money in the same city as Bob? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's all, like, I would have figured that the money would have been in Russia or something, or am I missing something here?
No, the way it works, and the Obshak is a very real thing.
Really?
Absolutely. It's just, I think Derek found a sexy way of describing what it is. He's saying it's a retirement fund for Russian mob. in reality, it's not a retirement fund. It's their operational fund. And there is the Russian object, there's a North American object, and it does travel. And I did talk via, everybody knows a guy who knows somebody, knows somebody, knows somebody. And I got to this one guy who over phone explained, I said, this is what we're going to be doing. It's an American film. We're going to be doing this. How bullshit is this? Can this happen? A little bit of research never hurts. And he said, it's you're close enough, but if you do large money, make sure that there's tens and twenties. I'm like, okay. So it is a traveling thing. Since the film, we never reveal where the action takes place. To me, it was always any town in America. If you look I don't know if it's an Easter egg, but the little thing we added that all the number plates are from different states. Because I remember in the beginning, Roger fires a production. I was like, Ilya, where is this taking place? We need to print those plates. We need to make it, that's the job. What do we do? And I said, just make each car a different plate. I don't care what they are. I just want them different. I don't want anybody to know where we are. This is any town in America. This is a guy who's a nobody in the suburbs. Make it any town in America. So the object as it travels, and there is a North American object, it all makes sense. And it's all partially true. It's all partially true is a weird way of putting it, but yes.
No, that makes sense. Because that actually makes sense. Because I was wondering, I'm like, well, is the money in Russia? And it would make sense if they have some money in America for what they need.
Well, the Russian mob apparently still exists in the States. So, as countless American films have taught us. So, yeah.
I got it.
Hollywood does not lie.
What? Say it again?
Hollywood does not lie. It would never lie to us.
Ever. They've never exaggerated the truth with anything.
No. Why would they?
Of course, that's crazy talk. So obviously there's the house attack, which we haven't talked about yet. And that is where, the family's locked up. It's Bob dealing with everyone coming through. Can you talk about filming that sequence? And is it one of these things? Because, the guys at 87 obviously have worked on the John Wick movies. And this is, an attack, sort of, I don't want to say like it's any sort of, because it's not a copy at all, but it's like there's a similar thing. How much are you sort of saying like we got to get away from that and we got to do this, or how much, you know what I mean?
It was never, I don't think we ever said out loud that we're not trying to do, we got to step away as much as we can from John Wick. Although I will, I greatly, with great fondness, I recall as I had my notes for the draft, the first draft I read, and I met with Derek. I think it was like our second or third get together, and Derek's just a sweetheart of a guy. And first time we met, he was like, "Ilya, love to meet you. Fan of your work. Best idea wins. All right, buddy." I'm like, "Nice of you to say it. I love it. Great." And we stayed with that throughout. I remember coming to Derek and saying, "Derek, remember all those things that really worked in John Wick and made you famous and made you a lot of money and made you a highly sought after writer? Let's have less of that in this movie." And he was like, all right. And he was in, but there was a lot more Wickisms. There was a lot more world building that I felt was not as necessary because the character and the story just seemed, what I love about the story is that it's all based on inner conflict, and all the important, sort of the biggest attraction in the story for me was what's happening inside Bob's mind, rather than the Russian mob and all those guys. If you think about it, the kitty cat bracelet, the watch, they don't matter. They're just an excuse for him to do what he really wanted to do for the last 15 years or so. So it was coming back to your question of sorry to go such a roundabout way. Coming back to the attack, we rewatched the first Wick with Pavel, our DP, during prep. And they're very different scenes in the sense that by this, I think that's the first big action scene in Wick, whereas ours is the end of Act 2. So we kind of know at this point what Bob's character is capable of. We knew we only had a day, or I think 13 hours to shoot the entire sequence, which is super tight. And in fact, it was so tight that the plan was, if we get through everything, we can go upstairs and shoot the baseball bat introduction, the first part of the fight, which I really wanted to get because I wanted that moment of him breaking the bat against his leg. To me, it was such a such a badass moment. I wanted Bob to have as many badass moments as possible in this film. But it's vastly differently structured, whereas John Wick is a longer scene because it is one of the first action encounters. With this one, it's more propulsive, I'd say. We don't focus on any one-on-one fight, whereas in Wick, it was more prolonged. I think there was a little bit more attackers. And plus, this one ends the way it ends, so we wanted to get to that peak as quickly as possible while still delivering the thrills.
I can't believe you shot this thing in 13 hours. I would have never known that.
I would have never expected it to be possible. But hey, again, you prep and you have a great team and you have Bob and you just go at it. That's it.
Sure. It's going to be my last question because I believe you have another interview to go do very soon. So what exactly, do you know what you're going to do next? What's coming up for you? There
are several projects that I was told early on when I arrived in Hollywood in 2013, after my first music video worked well, is that, Ilya, the way it works, you need to have a lot of irons in the fire. I'm like, okay, how many is a lot? They're like, aim for 5, have 3. I'm like, okay. So there was no time to prep anything when hardcore was happening. And when the movie came out and they were like, what do you want to do next? I'm like, I could pitch what I want, but I wouldn't have something to be brought to present. And this time I've been more, last 3 or 4 years, like I said, I think early on, told you, I've written and co-written quite a few scripts, and we've got options for 2 books that I really love. And one is called Leaving Berlin. It's Joseph Cannon book, New York Times bestseller. I got to add that, that's apparently very important. Not to me, but it's important to some. It's a great story about a guy coming back to post-war Germany, a Jew who ran away, comes back feeling like maybe East Germany is going to be great. And then he gets right in the thick of things, and it's a writer who has to become a spy. It's a romantic action thriller, which is vastly different. And I'm very excited for that to happen if it does. There's a contemporary Western called The Adventures of Benito Valenzuela, which I think is my, how do you say without sounding too pretentious? It's, if you imagine No Country for Old Men, but with humor, that kind of tone, that kind of grittiness, but with a little bit of that chuckle energy. And I finally got the rights to a book that I've been after for 20 years. It's weird. I look back on my old email account. I wrote to the author, a guy called Danny King, a British writer. He has a book called The Hitman's Diaries, which I was a huge fan of when I was growing up. And I wrote to him back then and said, I'd like to make a Russian version of this. He said, well, the rights are taken. I'm sorry, but let's keep in touch. And we stayed in touch all these years. And finally, the rights finally reverted back to him. And I'm like, Danny, I'm there. So I'm going to take a stab at that adaptation, see if that can be made. So those are the 3 that hopefully one of them will go, and some of them will take a little longer, but they're all very worthwhile and very different. I think as I progress and I get better at what I do, there's so many genres and so many things there's so many good stories I'd like to tell that hopefully I do have more opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I also hope this is a really big hit for you because I had a blast with it, and I would love to see Bob kicking more ass. So I'm just throwing that out there. But listen, congrats, and good luck with the rest of your interviews and everything that's going on. And please stay safe in Moscow. And hopefully I'll talk to you again in the not so distant future.
Steven, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I hope some of my answers were interesting enough and exciting, but I had a great time, and I'm very happy you enjoyed the film.
Oh, dude, I had a blast with it. I watched it again last night, to make sure I was ready.
That's, I think that is the biggest compliment.